What's up YouTube, I'm Guy, and today on the channel we are going to be checking out a Hamilton watch. What I am talking about is the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, reference number H69429931. This watch is something that I have been eagerly awaiting for a couple of months now. It was announced by Hamilton back in late 2017, November, December, something like that, and they said it was going to be available originally just in their Japanese boutique that they had just opened at that time, but available worldwide in January. Well, January came and went and it wasn't available until well into February. So finally, I got one of these in my hands. I ordered it from an authorized dealer last week. It showed up yesterday, I guess it was. And yeah, I'm really happy to bring it to the channel. I think I might be the first channel that's actually reviewed this watch in any level of detail. Now, like I said, I have been eagerly awaiting the arrival of this watch for months, and unfortunately, it's a little bittersweet. I'll explain more later, but needless to say, this watch is going to have to be sent back. The movement is not operating correctly. So, in this review, I'm going to be talking about that in some detail because it's the experience that I've had with this watch, but I don't think that I would say it's a negative of the watch. The problems that this movement is exhibiting is something that could happen to any watch, so don't take that as a negative criticism of this model watch specifically, just my specific example, and understand that I'm just sharing my experience with you guys. Again, I'll talk about the problems that I'm having with the movement of this watch in detail a little later in the video, but first I'm going to tell you guys all about the specs, the features, the functionality, the quality. We're going to look over the watch and, check it out. Then I'll talk about that stuff in more detail a little bit later. So this watch is, again, the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical Hand Wind, the new version. There's an older version of this watch that has been out for some time now. This one differs pretty significantly. Number one, this watch has a very vintage-inspired military-style dial. It looks very much like the military watches that were issued to, at a minimum, soldiers of the United States Army in the 1960s throughout the Vietnam era. It looks very much like that. This watch does not have a date complication, whereas the old mechanical field watch did have a date complication. This watch, the dial layout is a little bit different, and the markers feature a faux patina lume application that in pictures I was not super crazy about. I don't tend to favor watches that have a fake or faux patina to them. I don't like watches to look old when they're not old. I don't mind if they're antique inspired, if they draw from history, or if they have like a model that has a lot of provenance and they're trying to bring that feel into it, but I don't want them to make it look aged. That said, in person, that faux patina is much less aggressive and it doesn't stand out nearly as much as it does in the pictures, which I'm happy with. It is there, but it's subtle. It doesn't make it look as aged and as quote-unquote fake as it does in the pictures. So again, I'm happy about that. I'll show you all that stuff when we dive over to the tabletop view. But if that was something that turned you off about this watch, and I've seen people comment online about that this faux, fake, kind of orangey, creamy patina on the handset and the dial markers, if that was a turnoff for you, it might not be that big of a deal once you see it in person. Perhaps my video will show that off enough to give you a better idea of what it really looks like. This watch also does come on a really pretty decent Nato strap, but it has a few shortcomings, and I'll talk about those as well. But in comparison to that other mechanical Khaki Field watch, the hand wind version that has been in their catalog for years and years, I think this strap is a bit of an upgrade for some people. It's a little bit on the short side, that's why I say for some people. Regardless, I'm going to jump over to the tabletop view, I'm going to show you this watch, I'm going to talk about all that stuff, and then we'll come back over to this view and I will discuss the problems that I'm having with this watch in detail and sort of explain why I'm going to end up ultimately sending it back to the retailer for either a refund or an exchange. I haven't decided yet. So we'll be right back with the tabletop view of this review. Alright guys, here we have it, the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, reference H69429931. Manufacturer suggested retail price on this watch, $475. Of course, it can probably be picked up from an authorized dealer for a discount. I got about a 10% discount, and once it starts hitting the gray market, I suspect that that price will come down even more. Basic specifications on this watch. We'll talk about the measurements first. We have a case diameter of 38 millimeters, not including the crown. We have a lug width of 20 millimeters and a thickness of just under 10 millimeters. So this is a really low riding thin watch. Final measurement here we have from lug to lug, from the extremity of one end of the case to the other, or the watch's wingspan, of roughly 47 millimeters on my calipers. So overall, an excellent size. A size that I love. I like watches in that 36 to 38 millimeter size range, and it's nice and thin. It rides low to the wrist. Overall, the dimensions on this watch work almost perfectly for me. A lot of people complain about Hamilton watches having a long lug-to-lug width. 47 millimeters, I don't think that that's too big. It is a little bit big for a watch that's 38 millimeters in case diameter. Maybe you would see something that long on a 40 millimeter watch, but it fits my 6 3/4 inch wrist without any problems. I have no complaints at all about the size. This watch, of course, uses the ETA 2801-2 mechanical movement. It's a non-date hand winding and hacking movement, pretty much ubiquitous when it comes to mechanical hand winding movements. This ETA 2801-2 is technically an excellent movement, albeit I have a problem with mine, and we're going to talk about that in a lot of detail here in my final closing thoughts about this watch, and I'll explain the problems that I'm having, but I don't want to sully the review when we talk about problems with this specific example, because I don't think that it's indicative of the line of watches as a whole. I just kind of got unlucky in that my movement is not running correctly. So yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, the ETA 2801-2 is a great little movement, hand winding movement, and pretty much it's what we would expect in a watch like this. Now, other basic features about this watch, we have a stainless steel case with a beautiful satin finish. It also has drilled or perforated lugs, so you can easily remove the spring bars if you want to swap out different strap options. It's a nice feature. This watch is 50 meter water resist, and while it does not feature a screw down crown, probably sufficient for, basic swimming, getting it a little bit wet, getting caught in the rain, things like that. It should hold up okay. This watch does have a sapphire crystal and, protects this really attractive black dial with sort of a vintage applied lume, which we'll talk about here in detail. That's sort of a point of contention for me when I was thinking about buying this watch. Finally, it comes on this olive drab green strap with leather accents or highlights at the ends, over the holes here, and on the keepers, and it has a nice Hamilton signed stainless steel buckle. We'll look at that in more detail in a little bit as well. First thing I want to touch on this watch is the stainless steel case with this really nice satiny bead blasted finish. Up close here you can see that there's a little bit of a grain to the finish, but it's super smooth to the touch, and at arm's length it just looks like a perfectly satiny, soft, silky finish. It's really nicely done. The entire case of the watch, including the bezel, has that same satiny finish. The bezel here is, just a smooth bezel, as you can see, with that same finish. The execution, it's great. I really like it. In pictures, I wasn't super certain that I would appreciate the finish of this case, but when you see it in person, specifically again at arm's length, where you're not kind of seeing all of the grain of the finish as we're seeing here, it does look really nice, and absolutely not disappointed in the finish of this case. The case, as I had pointed out, does have drilled lug holes or perforations for easily removing the spring bars if you want to put it on some sort of strap. That's a nice little feature, particularly when we're talking about a field or tool watch. Having that functionality or option is something that I appreciate. And it's not like a high-end, dressy, refined watch, so it's not like it takes away from the design at all. The lugs, as we'd mentioned, they're a little bit on the long side. For a watch of this size, that being a 38 millimeter case, the lugs are a little bit long and they kind of taper down. That could be a complaint for somebody that has a particularly small wrist, as they might feel that it won't fit their wrist as well. In my example, or my case with a 6¾ inch wrist, it's not a problem at all. I don't find that the lug length on Hamilton watches is a problem, but I know people discuss that, and they say like, I don't like how much it kind of wraps around the wrist, on my wrist, in general for Hamilton watches. So, take that for what it is. The crown on this watch is a little bit oversized, but, it's functional. It works great. It has a signed Hamilton H logo there. Hand winding the movement is very nice. There's a little bit of resistance, but very smooth, very silky. And once you reach a full wind, you start feeling a little bit of resistance. And, you have to probably be a little bit careful to not break the, I guess, it's spinning up the mainspring in the barrel. You have to be careful not to overwind it. Right there is the maximum wind, and you feel resistance, and, that's it. Just stop there. But yeah, the crown is a little bit on the large size. That's sort of a complaint that I've had with Hamilton's field watches in general, and that also applies to my Hamilton Khaki Field automatic 38mm. I'll bring that watch in and we'll look at them side by side and compare whether or not the crowns are the same size or not. If we look at these two watches, the new Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical with the Hamilton Khaki Field 38mm automatic, in particular the crowns, they look to be about the same size. Maybe there's a slight difference in the dimensions, but overall they're basically the same. So if you have some experience with Hamilton watches in general, you'll know that, yeah, these crowns are a little bit on the oversized size, and if that's a problem for you, keep that in mind. That said, I guess the purpose of having these somewhat oversized crowns is that they're easier to manipulate if you were wearing gloves, being as how they're supposed to be kind of an outdoorsy tool/field watch. You might be in the situation where you have to manipulate this crown with gloves on your hands, and that would facilitate easier manipulation. On the other hand, for daily casual wear, you might get a little bit of interference with your wrist when it's on, and it just doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing with that large lug there, or not large lug, but that large crown there on the side of the watch. So it could be a plus, it could be a minus, depends on your perspective. I don't mind it, but if I had the option, if I was given the choice to have a little bit smaller, more refined crown there, yeah, I would take it. Give you a quick look here at the case back of the watch, and it is still wearing its protective plastic since I'm going to have to return this watch because it's not working 100% perfectly for me. But there you have it. It's a pretty simple, standard, no frills case back, screw down. Yeah, it is what it is, but I thought I'd give you a quick look at that. The crystal on this watch is pretty standard for Hamilton. Yes, it's sapphire. No, it does not have any AR coating, so as you can see, it's reflecting my ceiling fan, the camera, glare from my studio lights. It's a common complaint with Hamilton watches and their crystals. They use these pretty decent sapphire crystals, but they do not feature any anti-reflective coating, so very much a glare magnet, I guess it might be one way to describe it. Of course, sapphire crystal is scratch resistant, so that's a plus, and I will, I guess, since I have no choice, I'll sacrifice the anti-reflective coating, and be happy that at least it's going to be a durable, scratch-resistant, robust crystal for, potentially years and years to come. Now, of course, the highlight of this watch is going to be the dial. It has this awesome, vintage, military-inspired dial, very much in line with the watches that Hamilton produced for the United States military, and probably other militaries as well in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, I think even well through the 80s. Basically, a very straightforward, simple field watch style dial with Arabic numerals 12 through 11, and then a sub-ring of military time 13 through 24. The outer chapter ring features markers at every hour that are filled with this faux patina vintage style loom. That loom is also on the hour, minute, and second hands, just the very tip of the second hands, and then filled in the hour and the minute hands. Now, in pictures, that loom looks really, really yellow, creamy, almost orange. In person, here in my studio, in normal daylight conditions even, it does not present as orange or creamy. Zoomed in like this, I think it probably does on camera present a little bit more of that faux patina than perhaps you might be able to pick up with the naked eye. Now, this may or may not be a plus for you. If you really like that strong vintage looking lume application of lume on the dial and the handsets, it might be a little too tame for you. It might not be as strong as you were hoping based on pictures that you've seen online, maybe even based on this video zoomed in here so closely. On the other hand, if you're like me and a little bit turned off by watches that have a faux or fake patina that are made to look aged unnaturally, that would be a plus for you, because it's really not as aggressive and overwhelming as I thought it was going to be. It's actually pretty decent, if I'm being honest. The handset, it's a little bit more noticeable on the hour and minute hands, but on the outer markers, it's really not even easy to pick up with the naked eye. Again, you can kind of tell because we're zoomed in so close here, but with the naked eye at arm's length, you almost can't even tell. You almost only see it a little bit on the hour and minute hands. So it could be a plus, it could be a minus, it depends on who you are. The rest of the watch face is pretty simple. You got graduations between each hour marker. You have the Hamilton branding at the 12 o'clock side of the dial, and then down at the very bottom under the 6, you have Swiss made on either side of that 6 o'clock marker there down at the bottom of the dial. The rest of it, it's just a very flat matte black dial, and I think it's really attractive, and it's very simple, it's very plain. There's nothing extra added to the dial for embellishments. There's no applied markers, there's no extra levels of texturing, there's no guilloche, there's nothing going on. Very, very, very simple, very plain, I guess is the way I would describe it, but that's exactly what I wanted out of a watch like this. So yeah, I really like the dial layout, I really like the aesthetic. The handset is typical Hamilton handset. It's got these forgive me, I can't remember the name of the hands set that this uses. They're not sword hands. Regardless, it's a very typical handset for the Hamilton Khaki Field line of watches. Most of the watches in that line from their catalog have the same style handset, the exception being that these are painted white. And I'll bring in my 38mm real quick to show you. It's got the same style hands more or less, but these are finished in a stainless steel filled with normal white luminova lume, right? So more or less the same style of hands, just the finishing, the application a little bit different. I like this style of handset. I think that it's very legible. I think that it looks good, but generally speaking, I don't like a white handset. I prefer a stainless steel, high polished handset. However, on this watch, because it matches up so nicely with all of the numerals, because it has that vintage military styling, I think it works. I don't dislike it. The only thing that kind of bothers me about this handset is the counterbalance on the second hand, this large lollipop pip. I think that it is way too oversized. It almost looks a little bit comical, if I'm being honest. I wish that it was a little bit more subtle, a little more refined, and I'll bring in the 38mm automatic as a point of comparison. If you look at the counterbalance of the second hand on that watch, I think that the little lollipop pip there on the counterbalance side is sized perfectly. That's what I want on the hand-wind mechanical version. Unfortunately, that's not what we got, so it is what it is. But I just wanted to point out that little comparison between this watch and my other Hamilton. I do dislike how large that little counterbalance pip is on the second hand. In setting these watches side by side, which do I prefer? And I'll probably talk about this a little bit more further down in the closing thoughts, but for my money, I kind of prefer the Hamilton Khaki Field automatic 38mm, the watch on the right. I think that the mechanical hand-wind version with that vintage military style dial and no date complication looks fantastic. I really do like it. I'd be happy to have either one of these, but if I could only pick one, I feel like the automatic version is a little bit more refined, a little bit more stylized. I think it's a little bit more versatile. I think you could throw on the watch on the right hand side here for more occasions. I mean, it's certainly not a dress watch, but because it has the polished bezel and the satin brushed finish case and a slightly more subdued, subtle layout on the dial, it could be worn on more occasions. I wouldn't hesitate to wear this in a somewhat dressy or professional environment and feel like it's out of place. On the other hand, the new hand-winding mechanical khaki field, I mean, it's just straight up a tool watch, and it's awesome. Don't get me wrong. I think it's really cool. It just doesn't have that level of versatility that I find the automatic version does. Size-wise, dimensions, everything else, it's basically the same watch, with the exception of the styling, of the aesthetics. And if you're trying to pick between one of these watches, it's probably going to be a pretty easy decision. You're going to probably be drawn to one or the other very much immediately, and just identify with one style over the other. Now, the other upside with the automatic version is that it has a date complication over there at the 3 o'clock position. And as a matter of fact, that might be an upside for the mechanical hand wind. Maybe you don't want the date complication. Maybe you just want a simple 3-hand mechanical watch with no nonsense, no fuss, no muss. It could go either way. I like having a date, I gotta be honest. But I think that the vintage-inspired hand-winding version, the watch on the left, it does really work without a date complication. They made the correct decision when they decided to go with no date. It looks super cool. There's no doubt about it. So, side by side, yeah, I like them both a lot. If I had to pick just one, I think I'd go with the 38mm automatic on the right, just because it's a little bit more versatile. But tough decision. The last thing to touch on here is the strap that this comes on. This comes on this olive drab, OD green Nato strap. The strap has and the plastics are still on it, so forgive me, but it has a pretty nice brushed stainless steel Hamilton signed buckle. This decent, not high quality seatbelt material nylon strap like you would find on an Omega strap, or one of my favorite Nato straps, the Phenom Nato straps. It's not that high, super great quality nylon, but it's decent quality. OD green nylon. And then we have these leather highlights. There's a bit of leather down at the tongue and tip. There's a leather outline around all of the holes here, and then the keepers are leather. Now, I wonder long term, will these leather keepers hold up over a standard Nato strap that's going to have steel keepers? I would imagine no. They're not going to, and I don't know what the replacement cost on this strap is, but I'm guessing it's not super affordable if down the road you wear this strap out and you want to get a replacement from Hamilton. I honestly have no idea. But if I was going to guess a number, I'll bet you they're going to charge you $50 or more to replace this strap. Just a total shot in the dark guess. So if you wear this strap out, if these keepers break, yeah, you might be out a few bucks to replace it. That said, it's a cool looking strap. It's very decent quality. I'd call it high quality, with the exception of this nylon not being the really, really nice seatbelt material. It's a nice high quality strap, and I like it. There is a small problem with it, though. It is a relatively short strap. Now, for me, on my 6 3/4 inch wrist, it fits perfectly, but if my wrist were a little bit bigger, I would have a problem with it. Now I'm going to throw it on my wrist real quick and show you what I'm talking about, so give me just a sec. Alright, so here's the Hamilton on my wrist, that with this, green Nato strap, and the problem is, we look at this keeper, right? That's on the underside. If we flip it over and look at the opposite side, it's going to be hard to get a good angle here. The second keeper, the strap, just barely gets through there. So if you had a bigger wrist, the strap is going to be much shorter, and it's not even going to reach this second keeper. And the second keeper doesn't float on the strap at all, like some other Nato straps do. So you're just going to have this extra leather keeper out here, and the strap's not even going to go through it. Now, if you have a really small wrist, maybe you get a bunch of extra tail coming out through this side, what's going to happen? Well, it's a thick strap, and it's a pretty tight keeper. You're not going to be able to fold it back through. So if this doesn't fit you perfectly, it's probably not going to fit you at all, is the moral of the story. And again, there it is on my 6 3/4 inch wrist, and I know that the angles here make it a little bit difficult probably to see exactly what's going on, but very, very, very just barely fits my wrist perfectly. So yeah, that's a problem on this strap. Otherwise, it's a nice strap. I like it. And for me, it would work perfectly. But for a lot of people out there, it's going to be an issue as far as fitment. So there we have it, guys. That is the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, reference H69429931. Stick around for a few minutes. We're going to jump back over to the studio view, and I'm going to talk about the problems that I'm having with the movement in this watch. I'm going to show you how it's running on my time grapher. I'm going to talk about whether or not I'm going to replace it or just return it for a refund. So yeah, don't leave just yet. Stick around for that presentation. I'll be back in a moment. So in looking at this Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical over on the tabletop, it is a pretty impressive watch. I actually like it quite a bit. In comparison to my Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic, do I like it better? I'm not sure if I would say that. I think I still prefer the auto version. They're distinctly different in presentation. Sure, they're both field watches. Sure, they have the Hamilton brand and heritage, and there's a lot of similarities there. But, you know, if I had to pick one, it would be close, but I think I would prefer the automatic. I think it's a little more refined. I think it's not purely just a tool watch. This new mechanical hand-wind Khaki Field, it's through and through a tool watch. It's a field watch like nobody's business. Maybe one of the most perfectly designed modern field watches on the market today. And if that's what you're going for, this is almost certainly the one for you. Now, am I going to replace it because I'm having these problems with the movement? Well, first of all, let's talk about the movement. As I had mentioned in the introduction, I got this watch in the mail the other day, yesterday I guess it was, and I threw it on my time grapher, and immediately I was very disappointed, to be honest, in not the accuracy that I'm getting on the time grapher, but what I would call the health of the movement. I'll roll in some video here for you guys to see it. First, I'm going to roll in video of my Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic 38mm to show you that my time grapher works just fine. When you have a problem with a watch and it's showing symptoms of some sort of irregularity on a time grapher, a lot of times the first thing people are going to point to is your equipment. Is your time grapher functioning properly? So this is sort of the, I don't know, the test to prove, okay, my time grapher works fine. As you can see here, this watch is running perfectly fine. A little bit on the fast side, 5-6 seconds. I'm not looking at the video right now. I forget off the top of my head, but it's, if you look at the trace line, the two dots that are the tick-tock of the movement, it's running very cleanly. The movement has no problems as far as whether or not it's functioning correctly. On the other hand, if you look at this video of the new Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical hand-wind version, it's an absolute train wreck. As you can see, the lines on the trace graph are bouncing all over the place. It's an absolute mess. Why is it doing this? I mean, my guess is there is something wrong with the pallet fork of this movement. What you're seeing on those two little dots, the tick-tock, 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 those are the dots. Those dots are representing the pallet fork slapping back and forth on the escape wheel. That's what's generating that ticking sound. And they are not hitting or ticking uniformly at all. It's a huge problem in my opinion. Is the watch running? Yeah, it's running. Is it keeping time? I don't know. I haven't really timed it. What kind of accuracy is it keeping? But long term, this watch is not going to run good based off of what I'm seeing here. So why do I think that this watch is behaving so badly? Did it leave the Hamilton factory like this? Or was it potentially dropped or mishandled during shipping? It's hard to say. If I had to guess, I don't think it would leave the factory this way. I would guess that it was just mishandled or manhandled during shipping, or going to the retailer from the distributor, coming from the retailer to me, somewhere along that supply chain. My guess is that it got banged around pretty badly and something inside the watch is not running correctly. This is an ETA 2801-2 mechanical hand wind movement. They're known to be good movements. They're known to be pretty tough and robust. So I would kind of wonder, it was secured in a package. it wasn't packaged poorly. So, why would a little bit of mishandling from shipping cause this much quote unquote damage, I guess is the way I would describe it, to the movement? I don't really know. The moral of the story is, you guys that buy more than one or two watches, that if you have a collection, spend the $150 plus or minus and get a time grapher. You're going to save yourself a lot of money in the long run. This isn't the first watch that this has popped up for me with. As a matter of fact, the first Rolex Submariner that I got was exhibiting the same kind of problems that this watch was exhibiting. Not to the severity that we're seeing on the time grapher with this watch, but that's also a Submariner. That's an $8,000 watch. This is a $400-ish watch. So I would expect the Submariner to be quite a bit more robust. That said, it was unacceptable, and I returned that Submariner for an exchange for a brand new one to the authorized dealer 3 days after I bought it. So yeah, the moral of the story here is, buy a time grapher if you're a watch collector. It is going to save you money in the long run. If I didn't know that this watch wasn't running correctly, if I just said, oh well, it's ticking, it's keeping it's keeping goodish time, and I just kept it, what's going to happen to this watch 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road? In particular, if I didn't have a warranty with it, a lot of people are going to be looking for this watch on the gray market to save some money. I bought it from an authorized dealer because it was only available from an authorized dealer. There's no gray market suppliers with this watch yet. So I had the warranty. I could have sent it in and had to deal with that hassle. But what if you didn't have a warranty? You've got this $400 watch, roughly, plus or minus $400 watch, that is probably going to stop running correctly in relatively short order. I couldn't put a time frame on it, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. I don't know. But sooner or later, this watch is going to be in my opinion, it's in desperate need of a service right now. But most certainly, at some point in the not too distant future, it is going to be in need of a service. And you're going to be out even more money. How many times does a watch that you've purchased have to fail on you because it had problems right out of the box for this time grapher to pay for itself? In the case of a Rolex that costs thousands upon thousands of dollars, the answer is one time. One time you have to catch a problem with a new watch for this thing to pay for itself. It's that simple. For more affordable watches, maybe it's 2 or 3 watches. But yeah, this issue is not super uncommon. I've had dozens of watches come through my collection, and a handful of times now, this same thing has popped up. I think this might be there was the Rolex, there's this one now. I think there was another one quite a while back. I think it was a SARB 033 that I ended up sending back and getting a replacement a long time ago with. So that's 3 times that having a time grapher has saved me from having a watch that has problems with the movement. So yeah, moral of the story here, again, just get a time grapher if you're a collector. I can't think of a reason not to have that tool in your toolbox. So we talked about price a little bit. This watch is MSRP, $475. I picked it up from an authorized dealer for $425, so I got $50 off. It's roughly 10%. It's not available on the gray market yet that I have been able to find. I don't know what kind of prices to expect when it hits the gray market. Joma Shop is probably one of the usual suspects for getting Hamilton watches on the gray market, Amazon being another. I would suspect that this watch is going to be in the $350 to $375 price point when it hits gray market. Maybe a little bit higher initially, maybe $400 initially, but it'll probably come down as more and more of these watches come to market and become available. What do I think of this watch in terms of value when we're talking at a price of around $400? I think Hamilton watches are good values in general, and I would say that this watch is a good value as well, despite the fact that my watch has some problems. This, again, is not any sort of sign of a shortcoming of Hamilton. They don't routinely put out bad watches or bad movements. This was a fluke. Not a super uncommon fluke. Again, get a time grapher, but not something that you should expect, right? So in terms of value, is this watch a good value at $400? Value kind of is a two-sided term for me. There's retained or resale value, and then there's how much watch do you get for your money value. In terms of resale value, Hamilton watches do okay. I've resold a couple of Hamilton watches and I haven't lost a ton on them. So they're a decent value from that perspective. I don't think you're going to lose 50+% of your money if you ever decide to part with it. You'll probably have to let it go for a bit of a discount under what you paid for it. You know, if it's available on the gray market for $350 and you've got a used watch, you're not going to be able to sell it for $350, but probably $300. Maybe you lose 10%, 15%, something in that ballpark. So it's a decent value. I think Hamilton watches in general, if you get the more popular kind of sporty models, are decent values. Now, in terms of how much watch are you getting for your money, $400 plus or minus. What are you getting here? Well, you're getting a pretty basic watch. You're getting a mechanical hand wind ETA 2801-2 movement. You are getting a Sapphire Crystal, but you're getting no complications, no date, no anything like that, which is something that a lot of people that are buying this watch are specifically going to be looking for. It's very cool that it does not have a date, that it's just that clean, symmetrical layout on the dial. The case finishing is actually quite nice, as we touched on during the tabletop review. It's overall a really nice watch, but you're not getting a ton for the watch. The strap is cool if it fits you. Will it fit you? And if you have really large wrists, probably not. You're probably going to want to swap that out anyway. But if the strap does fit you, that's a nice added feature. 50-meter water resist, that's basically almost enough to be considered, decent, I guess. Probably wouldn't want to go swimming with this watch, things like that. But yeah, I think it's an okay value in terms of how much watch you're getting for the money. But you could probably do better. That's the moral of the story. But yeah, I think if you're gonna, just get this watch because it really sings to you, because of the dial, the layout, the design, the aesthetic, I don't think you're making a bad purchase here. Again, if I didn't already have the 38-meter automatic khaki field, 38mm automatic khaki field, I would most certainly keep this watch. We'll exchange it for a replacement. Without doubt, I really do like it. I think it's a cool watch. So I think it's a decent value overall. I don't think it's an outstanding value, but in the watch world, there's really not a ton of outstanding values to be had anyway. So you're getting pretty much par for the course here in terms of value. Alright guys, thanks for tuning into this review. I truly appreciate every time you guys watch my videos. It means the world to me, of course. If you want to help out the channel, down in the description below this video, there's a list of ways you can help my channel. Please do like and share this video, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and consider joining my Patreon. I really value the few Patreon supporters that I have over there, and it really does actually help the channel quite a bit. It brings in a little bit of money to help me offset the cost of what I'm doing here. And it's not exactly cheap. I do get a lot of watches on loan, and if you guys want to loan me watches, feel free to reach out to me via email to discuss that. But it is costly for me to do all of the return shipping on all of the watches that I'm loaned. So Patreon helps out with that. Direct donations helps out with that. Something else that really helps me, it adds up to be a decent additional source of revenue, is if you guys just shop using my Amazon affiliate link. That affiliate link is found down in the description of this video. If you click on that link, before you purchase anything on Amazon, I get a small commission, which, again, all that money comes into the channel to help me pay for return shipping on watches that are loaned to me, buy things for review, and to do as giveaways. We do have a couple of giveaways coming up here this next month, so keep an eye out for those. And yeah, shopping through my Amazon affiliate link helps me out a huge amount. And then, of course, just watching my videos. Google ad revenue is low, but a little bit of money that brings in, again, helps offset the costs that I do incur in developing content for this channel. So any of those things that you want to do to help me out would be fantastic and greatly appreciated. I hope you guys consider chipping in and joining up and, helping me out in some way, shape, or form. Thanks for checking out this video. Until next time, have a great day.